The begging stranger. The wind howled across the empty plains, carrying dust and the smell of coming rain. The human farmer Jacob stood outside his wooden homestead, his hands rough from years of work. He had just finished feeding the pigs when he heard a faint sound, a voice carried by the storm at first. He thought it was the wind playing tricks, but then he heard it again, sharper this time, a cry weak and broken. Jacob picked up his lantern and walked toward the gate. The storm made the world look strange. Shadows moved where nothing stood, and then he saw her, a woman, not human, stumbling through the mud, her clothes torn, her skin pale blue with strange glowing patterns along her arms. She held something tight against her chest, a small bundle. When she reached the fence, she fell to her knees in the mud. Her voice cracked as she begged, "Please, I'll even wash your pigs, just let my child into your homestead." Jacob froze, his lantern shaking slightly in his hand. He had heard many things about alien wanderers, none of them good. People in the village said they were thieves, beggars, even spies. To shelter one was to risk everything. The woman pressed her forehead to the muddy ground, her body trembling. The bundle in her arms moved and let out a small cough. Jacob realized it was a child, thin and weak, its tiny eyes glowing faintly in the lantern light. "I beg you," the woman whispered, her voice breaking like glass. "My child has not eaten in 2 days. We have nowhere to go." "Please," Jacob's heart pounded. His mind pulled in 2 directions. His farm was his life. His land was his only inheritance. If the villagers found out he gave shelter to an alien, they could take it all away. Yet in front of him was no monster, only a mother and her child drowning in desperation. He stepped closer, rain beginning to fall, the drops rolling down his lantern glass. "Get up," he said firmly, though his voice carried no anger. "Why come here? Why not the village?" The woman lifted her face, her eyes wide, silver tears tracing the dirt on her cheeks. "The village. They threw stones at me. They said my child should die." Her arms tightened around the small bundle. "Please, I will work. I will clean. I will serve. Only, let him live under a roof tonight." Jacob looked past her. The empty plains stretched into darkness. No one would come for her here. No one would even notice if she and her child lay down and never rose again. He swallowed hard, remembering the winters when even he had barely survived. The pigs squealed from the pen, restless in the storm. Jacob turned his eyes back to the alien mother. She was still kneeling, her back bent, her voice hoarse. Lightning flashed across the sky, and in that light Jacob saw the child's small face. Eyes half closed, lips dry, its breath shallow. The farmer clenched his jaw, his decision weighing like a stone. "You don't know me," Jacob said, his voice low. "If I let you in, it could cost me everything." The woman raised her head higher, desperation sharpening her words. "Then let it cost me. Take my hands if you must, but let him live. Please." Her plea cut through the storm like a blade. Jacob felt his chest tighten. He was a man who had buried his wife years ago. He knew the weight of loss. He knew the silence of an empty home. The lantern flickered in his grip, and he heard himself whisper, "Get up. Bring the child inside." For a moment the woman did not move, as if she feared the words were only a dream. Then slowly, shakily, she rose to her feet. Her knees slipping in the mud, she held the child tighter and stumbled toward the gate. Jacob pushed it open. The hinges groaning, he guided her across the yard, the pigs sniffing curiously at her scent. Inside the house the fire still burned low, the warmth spilling into the cold night. As she stepped over the threshold, the woman's legs buckled. Jacob caught her arm and eased her into a chair. Her child whimpered faintly. Jacob reached for a cup, filled it with water, and placed it gently to the child's lips. The woman's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You have saved him." Jacob stared into the fire, his mind heavy. He had not saved anyone yet. Tomorrow would bring questions, rumors, danger, but for now, in this small moment, he had given shelter. Outside the storm raged. The wind screamed against the wooden walls. But inside, in the glow of the fire, the stranger and her child breathed a little easier. Jacob leaned back in his chair, watching them, the weight of his choice pressing down like the storm itself. He knew nothing would ever be the same again. The night passed slowly. The storm never seemed to end. Rain lashed against the wooden walls of Jacob's homestead. The pigs snorted and shifted in their pens, but inside the fire kept a small pocket of warmth alive. The alien woman sat near the flames, holding her child close, her silver-marked skin glowing faintly in the light. The child stirred, weak but breathing. Jacob had not slept much. His thoughts were heavy. He kept hearing her words in his head. I'll wash your pigs, I'll do anything, just let my child in. He had allowed them to stay for one night, but dawn brought new questions. When the first rays of pale light broke through the clouds, Jacob rose. He stepped outside. The air smelled of wet earth, the ground still soft with mud. He looked across the plains toward the village. A place only a few miles away, he knew it was dangerous. The villagers hated outsiders, especially aliens. If they learned he had taken one in, he would lose his land, maybe even his life. Behind him, the door creaked. The woman stepped out, her child still in her arms, her eyes red from crying but her voice steady. Please, let us stay. I will work from sunrise to nightfall. I can clean, I can cook, I can tend your animals. You will not regret it. Jacob's jaw tightened. He turned to face her. One night was all I promised, he said firmly. If the council finds out, they will bring fire to this place. The woman shook her head quickly. I will stay in the barn. No one will see me, I swear it. I will make myself useful, only my child cannot survive outside. He is too weak. Her voice cracked, and she bowed her head. I do not beg for myself. I beg for him. Jacob studied her. The mud still clung to her torn clothes. Her arms trembled with exhaustion, yet there was strength in her eyes, a stubborn fire that refused to die. He thought of his own lonely nights, the silence of his empty home since his wife had passed. He thought of the pigs, stubborn creatures that needed more care than one man could always give. Finally he sighed, rubbing his rough hands against his face. If you want to stay, then you'll work, not for me, but for your child, understand? The woman nodded quickly, relief flashing across her face. Yes, I will work. Thank you. Her child let out a faint cough and she kissed his forehead, whispering something in a tongue Jacob could not understand. That morning, Jacob led her to the barn. The pigs squealed loudly at the new scent. The woman wrinkled her nose but said nothing. She set the child on a blanket near the hay, then rolled up her sleeves. Her delicate hands plunged into the muck without hesitation. She began cleaning, scrubbing, clearing filth with a speed that surprised Jacob. She worked as if her life depended on it, and perhaps it did. Jacob watched silently. The sight stirred something inside him. Here was a woman of another world, glowing markings across her arms, yet kneeling in dirt to prove her worth. Her pride swallowed for the sake of her child. Hours passed, and by noon the barn smelled fresher than it had in months. Jacob brought bread and water, setting it down without a word. The woman whispered thanks and gave the first piece to her child before touching any herself. But danger was never far in the distance. Jacob noticed a figure walking along the muddy road, one of the villagers, a man with sharp eyes who always carried news back to the council. Jacob's stomach tightened. He stepped quickly inside the barn, lowering his voice. Stay hidden. Someone's coming. The woman gathered her child, pressing him close. Her glowing patterns dimmed as fear swept through her. She crouched low behind the hay. Her breath shaking, Jacob walked out. Standing tall near the fence, pretending to check the pigs, the villager called out, Storm hit you hard last night, Jacob? Jacob forced a calm nod. Nothing I can't handle, he replied, his tone flat, his heart pounding. The villager's gaze lingered on the barn, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but after a moment he turned away, continuing down the road. Jacob exhaled slowly. Once the man was gone, he returned inside. The woman was still crouched in the shadows, clutching her child, her eyes wide with fear. Jacob nodded once. You see? This is the risk, she swallowed hard. I will stay quiet, I will not bring trouble. I swear it. Jacob looked at her, then at the small child who was nibbling weakly on the bread, his face pale, his tiny fingers clutching at life itself. Something inside Jacob shifted, his walls beginning to crack. That evening, when the sun dipped low, the woman was still working in the barn, her hands raw from scrubbing, yet she hummed softly to her child, a strange tune, otherworldly. It filled the quiet air with an aching beauty. Jacob stood at the doorway listening, his chest heavy. He realized this bargain was no longer just survival. It was the beginning of something that could change his life forever. Outside, the plains stretched silent and endless, but inside his homestead a fragile bond was forming, one that the world outside would never accept. And Jacob knew the storm of judgment had only just begun. The village was small, built of stone houses and dirt paths, but its people had sharp tongues. Word traveled faster than the wind on the plains, and rumors had a way of twisting into truth before the day was done. Jacob rarely went to the village, only when he needed grain or tools. He preferred the quiet of his land, But 2 days after he had taken the alien woman and her child in, he had no choice. The pigs needed feed, and his stores were nearly gone. When he walked into the square, the air felt heavier than usual. Eyes followed him. Whispers drifted like smoke. "Jacob's been acting strange," one voice said. "He doesn't come for days. Maybe he's hiding something." Another voice added. Jacob kept his face steady, though his heart grew restless. He bought the grain and loaded the sack onto his cart, but just as he turned to leave, an old woman leaned close, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "Storm nights bring strangers," she muttered. "Best keep your doors locked, Jacob." He gave a short nod and walked away, but the chill in her tone stayed with him. The council would hear of this, and once they grew suspicious, they would not rest until they found the truth. Back at the homestead, the alien woman was working as promised. Her hands rough with cuts, her back bent from scrubbing, yet her spirit did not break. Her child lay on a blanket in the barn, growing a little stronger each day. When Jacob told her of the whispers in the village, her face paled, her glowing markings dimmed as fear took hold. "They cannot know," she whispered, clutching her child close. "If they learn, they will kill him. They killed others of my kind before. I saw it with my own eyes." Jacob said nothing, but the weight of her words sank deep. He knew the council, he knew their cruelty, and he knew she was right. That night, when the stars came out, Jacob sat by the fire while the woman hummed softly to her child in the barn. He listened to the strange melody. It was not like any human song. It carried sorrow but also strength. It stirred something inside him, a memory of his own wife singing to him long ago. But before peace could settle, a loud knock shook the door. Jacob rose sharply, his hand instinctively reaching for the rifle by the wall. He opened the door to find 2 men from the village, their lanterns glowing in the dark, their faces stern. "Evening." "Jacob," one said, "we've been hearing things. Whispers that someone saw tracks near your land." "Not human tracks," Jacob kept his voice calm. "The storm left marks everywhere. Wind and rain can make anything look strange." The men glanced past him, trying to peer inside. "You wouldn't be hiding anyone, would you?" "Outsiders bring sickness, trouble." Worse, Jacob's grip tightened on the door. "My home is my own," he said firmly, "and no stranger crosses this threshold." The men exchanged looks, suspicion burning in their eyes, but after a tense moment they stepped back. "We'll be watching," one muttered before they left into the night. Jacob shut the door, his heart pounding. He turned and saw the woman standing in the shadows of the hall. Her child pressed against her chest, her eyes wide with terror. "They know," she whispered. "They will come again." Jacob placed the rifle back on the wall, his voice steady though his mind was in storm. "Then you must stay hidden, quieter than the wind itself. No one must see you, not even by accident." The next days grew heavier. The woman kept her word, working before dawn and after dusk, scrubbing, mending, tending to animals. Her child slowly gained strength, his small laughter like a spark of light in the gloom. But in the village, whispers grew louder. People spoke of Jacob's long absences, of the strange glow someone swore they saw near his barn at night. One afternoon, a boy from the village wandered near the homestead while chasing a stray goat. He peeked into the barn, his young eyes widening when he saw a glimpse of silver glowing on the alien woman's arm. She froze, terror flooding her face. The boy gasped and ran. Jacob caught him at the gate, grabbing his arm gently but firmly. "What did you see, boy?" he asked. The boy stammered, "There was someone not like us." Jacob's voice hardened. "You saw nothing but shadows and dust, do you understand? If you spread lies, your father will hear of your foolishness." The boy's eyes filled with fear. He nodded quickly and ran off, but Jacob knew the danger had doubled. Whispers were no longer enough. Soon the council would act. That night the alien woman sat silently, staring into the fire, her child asleep in her lap. "We cannot stay," she whispered. "They will come for us. I have seen this before." Always the same ending. Jacob looked at her, at the child with soft, glowing eyes, at the firelight reflecting on her weary face, and something inside him hardened. "No," he said quietly. "You will stay, and I will deal with them." The storm outside had passed, but another storm, of men, of fear, of hate, was already rising, and Jacob knew that his life and hers had crossed a line that could never be undone. The sun rose red over the plains, painting the sky with fire, but inside Jacob's chest the warmth did not reach. A cold weight pressed on him all morning. Whispers had grown too strong in the village. and he knew it was only a matter of time before someone came. He worked in silence, chopping wood near the barn, his ears always alert, the pigs restless, the air thick with unease. The alien woman moved quietly, feeding her child bits of bread. Her glowing markings dimmed, as if even her body understood the danger creeping closer. By midday, Jacob heard it, the sound of boots crunching against dirt, the creak of wagon wheels. Voices sharp and loud. He turned and saw them, a group of men from the village led by the council's enforcers, lanterns swinging from their hands though it was still day, their eyes narrow, their steps heavy with purpose. The alien woman froze when she heard them. Her face drained of color. She clutched her child against her chest, whispering, "They have come." Jacob's jaw tightened. He set the axe aside and grabbed his rifle, not to shoot, but to remind them that his land was not open ground. He walked to the gate, standing tall, blocking the path. The leader of the group, a broad man with scars across his cheek, stepped forward. "Jacob," he called, his voice carrying authority. "We've had reports of outsiders near your land. One of the boys claims he saw something unnatural in your barn." Jacob kept his voice steady. "Boys see shadows. Shadows turn to stories. I have nothing here but pigs and soil." The man's eyes narrowed. "Then you won't mind if we take a look," he said. Stepping closer, Jacob raised the rifle, not aimed, but resting across his arms, his stance unshaken. "My land, my home," he said firmly. "No man crosses my gate without my say," the men murmured, shifting uneasily. The leader sneered. "You'd turn your rifle on your own people to protect an alien wretch? Do you think we're blind? The village knows, Jacob, you've brought danger to all of us." Behind him, the alien woman stepped out of the barn, her legs trembling, her child pressed against her chest. She fell to her knees in the dirt, her voice breaking. "Please, I beg you, do not take my son. Take me if you must, chain me, beat me, but let him live," the child whimpered softly, his glowing eyes half closed. The men recoiled at the sight, muttering, "Look at it, not human. Cursed blood." The leader's lip curled. "That thing is no child. It's a plague waiting to spread. Hand it over, Jacob, or we'll take it by force." Jacob's grip on the rifle tightened. His heart thundered. He looked at the woman kneeling in the dirt, her face streaked with tears and mud, her voice raw with desperation. He remembered the night she had begged at his gate, her words still echoing. "I'll even wash your pigs, just let my child in." Jacob took a step forward, placing himself between the enforcers and the mother, his voice hard as iron. "You'll take nothing from here. Not while I stand." The men shifted uneasily, the weight of his defiance pressing on them. Some looked uncertain, but the leader barked, "You'd risk everything for a stranger? She is not one of us, Jacob. She is filth." Jacob's eyes burned, his voice rose like thunder. "She is a mother. That boy is a child, and I will not hand them to the likes of you." A tense silence fell, broken only by the sound of pigs squealing nervously in their pens. The men glanced at one another, their hands on their tools and knives. The leader spat on the ground. "Then you've chosen your side," he growled. "Don't think the village will forgive you." They turned and marched away, their threats heavy in the air, but Jacob knew they would return. Stronger, angrier, with more men. The alien woman remained kneeling, her forehead pressed to the dirt, tears soaking the ground. Jacob lowered his rifle and bent to lift her gently to her feet. Her body shook as she whispered, "You should not have done this. They will destroy you too." Jacob looked into her eyes, steady and unflinching. "Maybe," he said softly, "but I will not let them destroy him." His gaze shifted to the child who clung weakly to his mother's arm. That night the homestead was silent but tense. Jacob kept the rifle by the door. The fire burned low. The woman sat close, rocking her child to sleep. The storm outside had passed. But a new storm, of men's hate and fear, was now on its way. Jacob knew the next time they came, it would not be with words, it would be with fire and rope. And he would have to decide not just whether to protect them, but how far he was willing to go. The gate had become more than wood and iron. It had become a line between mercy and cruelty, between life and death, and Jacob, the lonely farmer, now stood as its last defense. The night after the confrontation felt heavier than any storm. Jacob barely closed his eyes, the rifle leaned against the wall beside him. Every creak of the wood, every cry of the pigs made his heart pound. He knew the men would return by morning. The alien woman was still awake too, her child asleep in her arms, his breathing soft. She looked at Jacob with weary eyes. "You should have let them take me," she whispered, her voice low. Now they will punish you as well. Jacob shook his head, his face grim. I've lost before, I've buried my wife. I won't stand by and bury innocents too. The day passed in uneasy silence. Jacob worked his fields, but his mind stayed on the village. The men's threats echoed in his ears by noon. The answer came. He saw smoke in the distance, rising from chimneys earlier than usual. He knew it was the council gathering, planning their revenge by evening. The price of his defiance was already visible. When he walked into the village for supplies, every eye turned cold, doors shut as he passed. Once friendly faces now twisted in scorn. At the well, a neighbor spat near his boots. Traitor, the man muttered, sheltering filth. Jacob ignored him. His jaw tight, he filled his bucket and walked away. But the whispers grew louder. Children pointed, repeating their parents' words. Alien lover, they called. Women drew their shawls tighter. Men crossed their arms. Jacob's name had become poison in the air. When he returned to the homestead, he found the alien woman kneeling in the dirt near the barn, her hands pressed to the soil as if in prayer, her child beside her. She looked up, tears streaking her face. They will not stop, she said. They will starve you. They will burn your land. Jacob placed the bucket down, his voice rough. Then let them try. But even as he said it, the truth was already cutting into his life. The next morning, when he went to buy feed for the pigs, the storekeeper refused, shaking his head. Orders from the council, Jacob, no trade for you, not while you harbor the cursed. Jacob slammed a silver coin on the counter. I pay fair, you know me. But the man pushed it back. Fear and hate mixed in his eyes. I can't risk it. By the third day, water from the village well was no longer allowed for him. He found men standing guard, blocking his way. Go draw from your own land, they sneered, though they knew his soil had no spring. The price of defiance was becoming clearer. He was being cut off. Pushed to the edge at night, Jacob sat with the alien woman near the fire. The pigs restless in their pen, hunger making them loud. The woman's hands were raw from work. Yet she still whispered songs to her child. Trying to keep him calm, Jacob watched the flames, his eyes tired but steady. They want me broken, he said quietly. But they don't understand, I've been broken before. And I rose again. The next day things grew darker. When Jacob went to check the fences, he found them cut, sharp wires left on the ground, one pig missing, hoofprints leading off toward the village. A warning. He clenched his fists, rage boiling. They'll starve us. One animal at a time, he muttered that evening. The alien woman stood beside him at the gate, her child wrapped tightly in her arms. She looked at Jacob with sorrow. You could still end this, she said softly. Give us up, they would forgive you. You would be safe. Jacob turned sharply, his eyes blazing. Safe? While they crush a mother and a child? No, woman, I'd rather die standing than live crawling. The woman's eyes filled with tears, but in them burned respect too. She bowed her head, whispering, Then you are braver than any man I have known. Days turned into nights. Jacob's stores of grain thinned. Water became harder to find. The villagers' cruelty pressed closer. Sometimes he saw them at the edge of his fields, standing with torches, not entering, just watching, reminding him of the fire they would one day bring. But Jacob refused to bend. He worked harder. He taught the woman how to mend fences, how to chop wood. Together they carried buckets from a muddy stream miles away. She carried her child on her back as she labored, sweat and dirt marking her once bright skin. One night, as the fire burned low, Jacob sat with the child in his arms while the woman rested. The boy's glowing eyes blinked up at him, innocent and soft. Jacob felt something stir in his chest, a warmth he thought he had buried years ago. He whispered to the child, They call you cursed, but to me, you are proof the world still has hope. Outside, in the darkness, a wolf howled across the plains, but inside the homestead, a fragile family held together by defiance was forming. The price Jacob paid was heavy, hunger, hatred, isolation, but in his heart, he knew the true cost would come when the villagers returned, not with whispers, not with warnings, but with fire. And when that day came, Jacob was ready to stand, even if it meant standing alone. The nights were growing colder, the days heavier. Jacob's farm felt less like a home and more like a fortress under siege. Every time he stepped outside, he scanned the horizon for torches or riders. But danger was not only at the gate. It lived inside the fear that grew with each passing day. The alien woman worked harder than ever, repairing fences, gathering wood, and keeping the barn clean. But her child was the center of her world. She never let him out of her sight, always holding him close, his small glowing eyes watching everything with quiet curiosity. One morning, Jacob found one of his lambs lying weak in the pen, its breath shallow, its body trembling. He cursed under his breath. "Damn! We can't afford to lose another." The woman hurried to his side, her child clinging to her arm, her eyes filled with sorrow. "It is dying," she whispered. "The sickness has taken it." Jacob knelt, stroking the lamb's head, frustration burning in his chest. He had already lost too much feed, water, pigs stolen by the villagers. Now even his animals were slipping away. He turned to fetch a knife, ready to end the creature's suffering quickly. But then he heard a soft voice, not his own. Not the woman's, it was the child. The boy reached out with trembling fingers, touching the lamb's wool. A faint glow spread from his small hand, soft and silver like moonlight. Jacob froze in place, the alien woman gasped. Clutching her chest, the lamb stirred. Its trembling eased, its breaths grew steadier. In moments it lifted its head, weak but alive. Jacob stared. The knife still in his hand, forgotten, his heart thundering. What did he do? Jacob whispered, his voice rough with awe. The woman's eyes filled with tears, both pride and fear. "This is his gift," she said softly. "My people were hunted for it, because they can heal what others cannot. That is why we ran, why I begged at your gate. They would kill him if they knew." Jacob sat back on his heels, staring at the boy who now smiled faintly, as if he did not understand the miracle he had just performed. "He saved it," Jacob muttered, his voice breaking between disbelief and wonder. But wonder quickly turned to dread, for Jacob knew the village already whispered of curses and sickness. If they learned of this power, their fear would ignite into rage. That evening, Jacob could not rest. He sat by the fire, his mind torn between awe and terror. The woman sat across from him, rocking her child, her voice low. "This is why they must never see him. Why I would rather die than hand him over." Jacob nodded slowly, his jaw tight. "And if they already suspect?" The woman's eyes darkened. "Then blood will follow." The very next day, their fear became reality. Jacob spotted 3 villagers at the far edge of his field. Whispering among themselves, one pointed toward the barn. Jacob knew they had heard something, seen something, the glowing eyes of the child, maybe the strange hum when he healed. That night, torches flickered on the horizon. Not many, only a handful, but enough to send chills through the homestead. Jacob stood at the door with his rifle. The woman pressed herself into the shadows, clutching her son tightly, her whispers trembling prayers. The villagers did not attack, not yet. They only stood at the edge of the field, chanting curses, their voices sharp. "Bring out the creature! Bring out the plague blood!" Jacob raised his rifle and fired a shot into the air. The crack echoed across the plains. The villagers flinched, then slowly withdrew, their voices fading, but their threats lingered like poison. Inside, Jacob lowered the rifle. His chest heavy, the woman looked at him, her eyes shining with fear. "They know," she whispered. "They will tell the council, they will bring more." Jacob sat heavily in his chair, his voice low but steady. "Then we stand ready, no matter what they bring." The child stirred in his mother's arms, his glowing eyes meeting Jacob's. The boy reached out a small hand toward him. Jacob hesitated, then gently took it. Warmth spread through his rough fingers, and for a moment, Jacob felt something he had not felt in years. Hope. But hope was dangerous now. It could draw fire, rope, and death to his gate. As the night grew darker, Jacob kept his rifle close. The woman sang softly to her child, and outside, the silence of the plains felt like the calm before a storm. The child's secret was no longer just a blessing. It had become a spark. And Jacob knew sparks could set the whole village aflame. The night before the attack was too quiet. Even the pigs stopped their restless grunts, as if the animals themselves sensed the storm that was coming. Jacob sat by the fire with his rifle across his knees. The alien woman rocked her child in the corner, her song faint but trembling. Neither of them slept. Outside, the sky was black. But when the first pale light of dawn touched the horizon, Jacob heard it. The sound of many feet, the crack of wagon wheels, the low murmur of angry voices. He rose slowly, his face hard. "They are here," he said. The woman pressed her child to her chest, her glowing markings flickering with fear. "We cannot fight them all," she whispered. Her voice shaking, Jacob looked at her, his jaw tight. "I am not fighting for me, I am fighting for him." He nodded toward the boy, whose small eyes glowed softly in the dim light. The first torches appeared at the gate. Dozens of villagers, Men with axes and knives, women with stones, even older children shouting curses. The leader from before stepped forward, his scarred face twisted in rage. "Jacob!" he shouted, his voice carrying across the yard. "This is your last chance. Hand over the alien and her spawn, or we burn you out and salt your land." Jacob stepped outside, his boots sinking into the damp soil. He held his rifle firmly but kept it low, his voice steady. "This is my land, my home. You will take nothing from it." The crowd roared in anger, torches raised high. Someone hurled a rock that struck the fence. Splintering the wood, the alien woman stepped out too. Her child in her arms, her knees shaking. She fell to the dirt and cried out, "Please, not my son. Punish me if you must, but let him live." Her desperate cry hung in the air, silencing some for a moment. Even in their hate they could see her trembling form, her glowing eyes wet with tears, but the leader sneered. "That thing is no son, it is a curse. We will not let it live to bring sickness to our blood." The child whimpered and clutched at Jacob's coat, his small glowing hand pressing to the farmer's arm. Jacob felt warmth spread through him. Calm in the middle of chaos, he raised his rifle high. His voice thundered like the coming storm. "You call him a curse, I call him a child. And you will have to kill me before you lay a finger on him." The villagers shouted, some surged forward. But then something unexpected happened. The boy's glow spread brighter, his eyes shining like silver fire. The sickly pig in the pen stirred, rising to its feet, healed. A lamb bleated with sudden strength. The animals that had been weak now stood tall. Gasps ran through the crowd. Some villagers stumbled back, whispering, "It healed them. He healed them." Fear and awe battled in their faces. The leader snarled, "It is witchcraft. Don't be fooled." But not all agreed. One woman stepped forward, her face torn with doubt. "That is no curse, that is a gift," she said, her voice trembling. "We've all lost to sickness. If he can heal, then—" Others murmured, torn between fear and wonder. The unity of the mob cracked. The leader roared, raising his axe. "Enough! Kill them all!" He charged toward the gate, but Jacob was faster. His rifle fired into the air, the sound like thunder. The leader froze as Jacob aimed steady at his chest. "I warned you," Jacob said coldly, not one step closer. The crowd wavered. Torches flickering in the dawn light, whispers rising louder. "He healed. Did you see? He healed." The mob was breaking apart, their anger turning to confusion. Some threw down their stones, others backed away. Only a few still stood firm behind their leader. Jacob lowered the rifle slightly but kept his voice strong. "You came to kill a mother and a child, but you saw with your own eyes. This boy gives life, not death, if you burn this home. You burn your only chance to save yourselves." Silence fell heavy. The villagers looked at each other, doubt spreading like cracks in stone. Finally, one by one, they began to step back. Torches lowered, curses fading into uneasy whispers, until only the leader remained, his face red with rage. But even he knew when a battle was lost. With a snarl, he spat at the ground and stormed away, his men following. When the last of the crowd vanished into the morning light, Jacob lowered his rifle, his breath heavy. The alien woman collapsed to her knees, tears streaming down her face as she clutched her child, whispering, "We are alive. We are alive." Jacob knelt beside her, placing a rough hand on her shoulder. "You are more than alive," he said quietly. "You are safe here in this home, for as long as I breathe." The boy looked up at him with glowing eyes, small fingers reaching to Jacob's hand. Warmth spread through him again, not just healing, but hope. The dawn broke fully then, painting the sky gold. And for the first time in many years, Jacob's homestead felt alive, not just a place of labor, but a sanctuary. He had stood at the gate, and he had not stood alone. And though the village's hate would not vanish in a day, Jacob knew one truth had already taken root. The alien woman had offered to wash his pigs, but she had given him something greater, a family worth fighting for.